Life has a way of testing our strength when we least expect it. For Samantha, what began as a picture-perfect marriage turned into a web of lies, betrayal, and deception. But in the face of heartbreak, she found the courage to fight back, using the very tools that once held her marriage together. This is the story of how betrayal can either break you or make you stronger, and how a woman can reclaim her life and her power in the most unexpected way. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start today's story with life stories. I always believed that love was something that grew stronger with time. That the longer you're with someone, the deeper your connection becomes. I thought my marriage to Michael was a testament to that belief. We had been together for 8 years. And while we weren't perfect, we had built something solid. Something real. At least, I thought we had. But in the span of a few minutes, everything I thought I knew about our life together came crashing down. It started like any other day. I was sitting at my desk in the office, wrapped up in a routine, managing cases, negotiating deals, and keeping up with deadlines. It was just another Tuesday. Or so I thought. My phone buzzed with a message from Michael. Something about how he had caught 3 fish while out camping. Something he knew would make me smile. I read the text, then glanced at the picture he'd attached. There he was, standing proudly with his catch, smiling at the camera. His message was calm, almost serene, as though he were trying to convince me that the solitude of his detox retreat was exactly what he needed. I stared at the image for a while, feeling a twinge of something I couldn't quite place. My mind was foggy, but a part of me could sense that something wasn't right. I then did something I hadn't done before. I checked his social media. I don't know why I hadn't before, but there it was. A sense of curiosity that took hold. What I found on his Facebook page left me frozen. There, clear as day, was another photo of him. This time, he wasn't alone. He was sitting at a beachfront bar, his arm casually draped around a woman, his secretary, Brianna, with a drink in hand and a carefree smile on his face. The timestamp on the photo read, 2 minutes ago. I felt the blood rush to my face as my stomach churned. The woman in the picture was someone he had mentioned frequently over the past few months. She was efficient, he'd say. She could keep up with his demanding schedule. I had always brushed it off, believing that trust was the foundation of any relationship. But now, as I stared at that picture, every word Michael had ever said to me felt like a lie. I typed back a message, my fingers trembling slightly, but I kept my voice steady. I wrote, "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so glad you're finding peace in nature." I hit send without thinking. It wasn't because I didn't care. I was furious. But I had learned, over the years, that sometimes silence can be the most powerful weapon. I needed to gather my thoughts. And more importantly, I needed to gather proof. A few minutes later, my colleague Rachel rushed into my office. Her face flushed. "You need to see this," she said, pulling up Brianna's Facebook page. There it was, the betrayal, plastered for everyone to see. Sunset walks on the beach, candlelit dinners, stolen kisses by the pool. Each photo came with nauseating captions, "Finally with my true love and no more hiding." As I scrolled, the anger inside me grew. But it was mixed with something else, something like a bitter humor. The carelessness of it all, the ease with which they flaunted their affair, almost made me laugh. How foolish they were. How naive. Did they not think I would find out? Did they not understand that their little game was about to unravel? "Oh my God. Samantha," Rachel whispered, reaching for my hand. "What are you going to do?" I closed my laptop slowly, my face a mask of calm. Years of courtroom experience had taught me the value of controlling one's emotions, especially when the stakes were high. I wasn't about to let Michael see my pain, not just yet. He had no idea that while he was off in Punana with Brianna, sipping cocktails and betraying our marriage, he had given me everything I needed to destroy him. His lies had become my ammunition. "First," I said, pulling out a legal pad, I'm going to text my darling husband and ask if the fish are big. It wasn't about the fish. Of course. It was about setting the stage. I sent another message, miss you so much. Can't wait to hear all about your wilderness adventures. Rachel watched me with confusion clear on her face. Shouldn't you confront him? She asked. I smiled. A cool, calculating smile. The kind of smile I had worn during countless negotiations. I remembered every case I had won by letting my opponents think they had the upper hand. In my line of work, I had learned that the element of surprise could be the most powerful weapon of all. And Michael had underestimated me. He thought he was so clever with his camping story. But he hadn't anticipated that his mistress's social media addiction would be his downfall. Do you know what's better than catching him in a lie? I asked Rachel, already drafting notes on my legal pad. Letting him keep lying while I dismantle his entire life. I had no idea at that moment how much this would cost me emotionally. But I knew one thing for sure, I would not let Michael's betrayal define me. I was going to take control. And when I was finished, I would be the one left standing. The days that followed would be filled with cold calculations, endless paperwork, and a determination to reclaim the life that Michael had tried to steal from me. But for now, I simply allowed myself one moment to gather strength. I had learned long ago that sometimes, in the face of heartbreak, the best thing you can do is play the long game. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity, but not the kind I had been accustomed to. I wasn't dealing with work deadlines or case files, I was dealing with something far more personal. My mind, usually sharp and focused, was now consumed with the task at hand, gathering the evidence to expose Michael for what he truly was. And so, I began. First, I focused on the financials. I had always been meticulous with money. As a corporate attorney, keeping track of expenses, investments, and accounts was second nature to me. So when I pulled up our joint bank accounts, I wasn't surprised to find a pattern of suspicious activity. It was the kind of thing I would have noticed in any other case. And now it was right in front of me. There were several large transactions that stood out: first-class tickets to Punana, a 5-star resort stay, meals at high-end restaurants, and hotel charges in cities where Michael had claimed to be on business trips. I couldn't help but feel the sting as I scrolled through the records. My fingers trembled with anger. But there was no time for emotion. I was on a mission. I quickly started documenting everything. Every transaction. Every payment that didn't make sense. I took screenshots, saved receipts, and organized everything into neatly labeled folders. The evidence was damning. And the realization hit me like a cold wave: Michael hadn't just been unfaithful, he had been spending our money on his affair. All while lying to me about needing a break to detox. And then there was the matter of Brianna. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Every time Michael mentioned her in passing, I had dismissed the warning bells ringing in my head. She was young, efficient, and apparently very good at her job. But I never imagined the extent of their relationship. Now, her social media posts were flooding in. Each one seemed to mock me further. There she was, in photo after photo, with Michael, smiling, laughing, and living the life I had thought I was sharing with him. Every caption was another blow to my heart. But in the midst of all this anger and betrayal, I found a strange sense of clarity. Michael had made one fatal mistake: his mistress couldn't help but document every moment of their affair on social media. It was her addiction, her need for attention, that would bring him down. Every photo, every check-in, every public declaration of love was a piece of the puzzle. And it was all right there, for me to use against him. I wasn't going to confront him just yet. No. That would come later. I needed to let him keep lying. Keep thinking he had control. Let him think that his perfect little world was still intact while I methodically and quietly dismantled it. It was the art of the long game. Something I knew all too well from years of courtroom experience. Rachel was by my side every step of the way. She had been my rock, offering support when I needed it most. She sat with me as I scrolled through Brianna's Facebook profile, picking apart every post, every subtle detail that could be used as evidence. Rachel was the one who reminded me of the smaller signs I had ignored over the past few months, the sudden interest in work conferences out of state, the new gym membership that Michael never seemed to use, the changed passwords on his phone and laptop. I had seen these signs in other cases, but I had convinced myself that our marriage was different. Now, I realized how foolish I had been. You weren't blind, Samantha, Rachel said gently, her voice soothing yet firm. You were trusting. And that's not a crime. Her words stuck with me. I had trusted Michael completely. And in doing so, I had allowed myself to be blindsided. But that trust was gone now, replaced by a deep sense of betrayal. Still, I wasn't angry at myself. I had done the best I could. And now it was time to take action. The next thing I did was freeze our joint accounts. I knew Michael would try to access them once he realized what was happening. So I made sure my personal assets were moved to a new, secure account that he wouldn't have access to. The sense of control that came from that decision was intoxicating. For the first time in days, I felt like I was taking back the power that Michael had stolen from me. As the days turned into weeks, my plan began to take shape. I called Nathan's HR director at his firm, a woman named Susan Mills whom I had worked with before. It was time to let them know what was happening. Not just in our personal lives but in their company as well. I forwarded her the photos Brianna had posted on social media, as well as my concerns about the violation of company policies regarding relationships between supervisors and their subordinates. You need to escalate this, Susan had said, her voice strained. This is serious, and she was right. It was serious. But I wasn't finished yet. I needed to hit Michael where it hurt the most. I wasn't going to confront him in person, no. That would come later. For now, I was going to build a case so airtight that he wouldn't know what hit him. Everything had to be documented. Every lie exposed. Every transaction traced. But it wasn't just about the financial evidence. It was about the emotional toll this had taken on me. There were moments when I felt like I was losing myself in the process. Like the anger and the betrayal were consuming me. But then I would look at the evidence in front of me, the photos, the bank statements, the emails, and I would remind myself that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming my life and my dignity. And so, I kept going, step by step, building my case. Because no matter how deep Michael's lies ran, I was determined to expose him for who he truly was. The days following my meticulous work to gather evidence were a blur of calculated steps. I had become a woman on a mission, determined to bring Michael's lies to light. There was no room for sentiment now, only strategy. Yet, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. It was strange how something so cold, so logical, could be so emotionally taxing. But that's what betrayal did to you. It stripped you of the familiar, the comfortable, and left you with only the bare truth. Each piece of evidence I gathered was a small victory. But there was still so much left to do. It wasn't just about exposing Michael's affair. It was about bringing down the house of cards he had so carefully built around our marriage. I had discovered that Michael had been transferring large sums of money to a private account. A secret account I had no knowledge of. The total amount, when I added it up, was staggering. Nearly $90,000. I couldn't believe it. All that time, while I had been working hard to support our life together, he had been planning his escape, quietly siphoning money away from us both. The discovery felt like a punch to the gut. I had always trusted Michael to make responsible decisions with our finances. We had talked about our future, our plans, our goals. And here I was, discovering that none of it had ever mattered to him. This money wasn't just for his affair, it was his exit strategy. He was preparing to leave me, to walk away from the life we had built. And I had been completely unaware. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not this time. I spent the next few days taking action. putting the pieces of the puzzle together in a way that would make it impossible for him to deny the truth. I froze our joint accounts, moved my personal assets into a separate account, and contacted my bank to ensure that Michael wouldn't have access to any of it. His little romantic getaway with Brianna was going to be the least of his worries once I was done. I also reached out to Susan Mills, the HR director at Michael's firm. The violations of company policies were clear, and I wasn't about to let them slide. I forwarded her the photos, the social media posts, and the evidence of the inappropriate relationship between Michael and his secretary. This wasn't just about my personal pain, it was about exposing Michael's misconduct in every possible way. At the same time, I called a locksmith. It was time to change the locks on our house. There was no way I was going to let Michael return to our home and act as if nothing had happened. Every inch of this process was about reclaiming my power, taking back control over the life I had so foolishly allowed him to shatter. The culmination of my actions came when I received a call from James Morrison, Michael's boss, late one afternoon. The tone of his voice was grave, and I knew immediately something had gone terribly wrong. "I assume you know why I'm calling," he said. I didn't have to ask, I had been waiting for this moment. The one where everything came crashing down. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I know exactly why you're calling." It turned out that Michael's embezzling had gone deeper than I had imagined. His firm had conducted an internal audit, triggered by the photos of him and Brianna that I had sent to Susan. The audit uncovered a series of fraudulent transactions, including the large sums Michael had been funneling into offshore accounts, all financed by the company's clients. James had just found out that Michael had blackmailed 6 of their top clients to fund his affair. The amount of money was staggering, over $2 million. And that was just what they had found so far. I felt a surge of triumph. But there was also a deep sense of disgust. How could someone I had loved, trusted, and shared my life with do something so vile? But as I sat there, absorbing the weight of the situation, I knew there was no turning back now. I had the evidence. I had the power. And I wasn't about to let Michael walk away without facing the consequences. "I've already contacted the FBI," James said, his voice shaking with the weight of what had been uncovered. "They're coming in tomorrow to discuss the next steps." The realization that this was no longer just about an affair, but about criminal activity, hit me like a freight train. Michael's betrayal had turned into something much larger, something that had far-reaching consequences. This wasn't just about my broken heart, it was about exposing a corrupt system that Michael had been part of for years. The following day was a blur of activity. I met with the FBI, providing them with all the evidence I had carefully gathered. James Morrison was there too, sitting across from me, looking like a man who had just woken up to a nightmare he couldn't undo. By the time I left that meeting, I knew everything had changed. Michael's carefully constructed world was crumbling. His lies, his manipulation, and his betrayal were all being exposed for what they truly were. He had underestimated me, thinking he could live a double life without consequence. That night, as I sat alone in my office, I received one last message from Michael. "I can explain everything," he wrote. "Please, let's talk." But there was nothing left to say. Everything had already been said, by the evidence, by the truth. I typed back a simple response: "I understand perfectly. Unlike your camping photos, I have real receipts." It was a final blow. A message he would never forget. I blocked his number without a second thought. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I had taken control. I had fought back. And I knew, deep down, that I had just begun to rebuild my life, stronger than before. As the months passed, the aftermath of Michael's betrayal slowly started to fade, replaced by a new sense of purpose and strength. The trial was brief, but the lessons I learned from it would last a lifetime. Michael and Brianna both took plea deals, and the evidence I had painstakingly gathered ensured that they couldn't escape the consequences of their actions. Michael's embezzlement scheme, his lies, and his manipulation were now public. and no one in his life could pretend they hadn't seen the truth. As I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just about justice, it was about reclaiming myself. My career, once intertwined with Michael's, was now mine to shape. The consulting firm I had started took off faster than I ever imagined, and I began helping companies prevent fraud, turning my experience into expertise. The betrayal that had once shattered my world had become the very thing that propelled me to success. There were moments when I wondered if Michael knew about my accomplishments, if he saw the media coverage or heard the buzz about my new business. I didn't care. What mattered was that I had turned the pain into something meaningful. Something that would outlast any of the lies he had told me. The last time I saw Michael's name was in a letter that arrived weeks after the trial. I shredded it unopened. Some chapters, I realized, don't need a final page, they just need to end. And so, as I continue on this new path, stronger and more self-assured, I know that I am the author of my own story now. To follow more life stories and journeys of transformation, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for the latest updates.